The first shot echoed across the plain like thunder, sending a flock of startled ravens into the crimson Montana sunset. Zara Fletcher ducked behind an overturned wagon, her heart hammering against her ribs as the bullet splintered the wood inches from her face. It was 1876, and the promise of a new life in Helena had just erupted into gunfire on this desolate stretch of prairie. "Thomas!" she screamed, her voice lost in the chaos as more shots rang out. The stagecoach robbery had happened so fast, the masked men appearing from nowhere, demanding valuables, then opening fire when the driver reached for his gun. Zara clutched her wedding band, twisting it anxiously as she peered around the wagon's edge. Her husband of just 3 months lay motionless in the dirt, blood pooling beneath him. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Thomas was gone, and she was alone in the vast, unforgiving territory. When the bandits finally rode off with their bounty, Zara crawled to Thomas's body. She held his hand until it grew cold, whispering promises she knew she couldn't keep, about the life they'd planned to build together. As night fell, bringing with it the howl of distant wolves, Zara did the hardest thing she'd ever done. She gathered what supplies she could salvage, wrapped her husband's body in their quilt, and buried him beneath a lone cottonwood tree. That had been 6 months ago. Now, Zara stood behind the bar of the Broken Spoke Saloon in Silver Gulch, serving whiskey to miners and cowboys, with a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. The small mining town had been her unexpected salvation, offering work when she'd stumbled in, half dead from exposure and grief. "Another round for the table, Miss Zara," called a gruff voice from across the room. Garrett Galloway sat with 3 other men, cards fanned in his large, calloused hands. Unlike the others, his gaze never lingered inappropriately, and he always tipped his hat when she passed. "Coming right up, Mr. Galloway," she replied, filling glasses with the amber liquid. Garrett was something of a mystery in Silver Gulch. He had arrived nearly 2 years earlier, purchased the abandoned livery stable, and transformed it into the finest horse trading post in the territory. Rumors swirled about his past, that he'd been a Texas Ranger, or maybe a gunslinger who'd hung up his weapons for a more peaceful life. Whatever the truth, he kept to himself, speaking little and watching much. As Zara approached their table with the drinks, the saloon doors burst open, bringing with them a gust of autumn wind and 3 trail-worn cowboys. Their spurs jangled against the wooden floor as they sauntered to the bar, eyes immediately fixing on Zara. "Well, ain't you a pretty little thing?" said the tallest one, his breath already heavy with liquor. "How about you come sit on my lap while you pour me a drink?" "I serve from behind the bar, sir," Zara replied coolly, setting down Garrett's drinks and turning away. A rough hand caught her wrist. "That ain't no way to treat paying customers, darlin'." Before Zara could respond, a shadow fell across them. Garrett stood beside her, his 6'3" frame imposing even without the cold look in his green eyes. "The lady said no," he stated simply, his voice low but carrying an unmistakable edge. "I suggest you find another saloon if you don't like how things work here." The cowboy sized Garrett up, noticing the way his coat fell open slightly, revealing the handle of a Colt revolver. After a tense moment, he released Zara's wrist. "Plenty of friendlier establishments down the line anyway," he muttered, gesturing to his companions. They left, the doors swinging behind them. "Thank you, Mr. Galloway," Zara said, rubbing her wrist. "But I could have handled it." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "No doubt, Miss Fletcher. Just thought I'd save you the trouble of having to clean blood off the floor tonight." That earned a small, genuine laugh from Zara, perhaps her first since coming to Silver Gulch. Something flickered in Garrett's eyes at the sound, but he simply nodded and returned to his card game. Later that night, as Zara swept the empty saloon, her thoughts drifted to the quiet horse trader. In 6 months, he'd never been anything but respectful, yet there was something in the way he carried himself attention, like a man constantly anticipating danger. She recognized it because she felt it too, that vigilant grief that kept you looking over your shoulder, expecting the worst. The following morning dawned clear and crisp. Zara rose early, as was her habit, to tend to her small garden behind the room she rented above the general store. The plot wasn't much, but growing vegetables gave her a sense of purpose beyond simply surviving each day. She was kneeling in the dirt, pulling stubborn weeds, when the sound of approaching hoofbeats made her look up. Garrett Galloway rode toward her on his distinctive black stallion, leading a chestnut mare behind him. "Morning, Miss Fletcher," he called, tipping his hat as he dismounted. "Hope I'm not intruding." Zara stood, brushing dirt from her apron. "Not at all, Mr. Galloway. Is there something I can help you with?" He patted the chestnut's neck. "Actually, I was hoping to help you. Noticed you walking everywhere in town. A lady ought to have a proper horse in these parts." Zara stared at the beautiful mare, then back at Garrett. "Mr. Galloway, I couldn't possibly—" "She's not a gift," he said quickly, seemingly understanding her pride. "More of a loan. I've got too many horses at the livery right now, and this one needs regular exercise. Would be doing me a favor, really." It was a transparent excuse, but Zara found herself reaching out to stroke the mare's velvety nose. "She's beautiful. Her name's Penny, gentlest horse I've ever trained." He handed Zara the reins. "Just try her out. If you don't like her, bring her back." Their fingers brushed during the exchange, a brief contact that sent an unexpected warmth up Zara's arm. She withdrew her hand quickly, unsettled by the sensation. "That's very kind of you," she managed, looking anywhere but at his face. "I'll take good care of her." Garrett cleared his throat. "There's a nice riding path along the creek, if you're inclined. Good place to clear your head." He hesitated, then added more softly, "Helped me anyway, after I first came here." The personal admission surprised Zara. It was the most he'd ever revealed about himself. "Were you running from something, Mr. Galloway?" she asked before she could stop herself. His green eyes met hers, unreadable as ever. "Aren't we all, in one way or another?" With that cryptic response, he mounted his stallion and rode away, leaving Zara with Penny's reins in her hand and a curious fluttering in her chest that she hadn't felt since Thomas. That afternoon, unable to resist the temptation, Zara took Penny out along the creek path Garrett had mentioned. The mare was indeed gentle, responding to the slightest pressure of her knees. As they trotted alongside the bubbling water, beneath the golden-leaved cottonwoods, Zara felt something hard within her begin to soften. The constant vigilance, the grief that had become her companion, both receded slightly with each hoofbeat. She rode further than intended, following the creek as it wound through a small canyon. Rounding a bend, she came upon an unexpected sight: Garrett Galloway standing knee-deep in the water, shirtless, with a fishing line cast into a deep pool. His broad back was to her, scarred in several places with what looked like old bullet wounds. Zara knew she should turn around, give him privacy, but she was transfixed, not just by his physical presence, though that was undeniably arresting, but by how at peace he seemed so different from his usual guarded demeanor. As if sensing her gaze, Garrett turned. Surprise registered on his face before he smiled a real smile that transformed his features entirely. "Penny treating you well?" he called, reeling in his line. "Very well," Zara replied, embarrassed at being caught staring. "I'm sorry to intrude on your fishing." "No intrusion." He waded ashore, quickly pulling his shirt on. "Just catching dinner. Would you care to join me? Fish tastes better with company." The invitation was casual, but Zara detected a hint of nervousness beneath it. This man who faced down troublemakers without blinking seemed almost shy now. "I should get back," she said automatically, the response of a woman who'd built walls around herself. Disappointment flickered across his face. "Of course. Another time, perhaps." Zara hesitated, then surprised herself. "Actually, I haven't eaten yet. If you're certain there's enough fish for two." His smile returned, brighter than before. "Always catch more than I need, old habit from when I had others depending on me." He built a small fire by the creek bank, cleaning his catch with expert efficiency. Zara watched his hands, strong but careful, as they were with horses. He spoke little as he cooked, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. "You're good at that," she observed as he turned the fish over the flames. "Had to learn young. My pa died when I was 12. Left me and my ma and 3 younger sisters to fend for ourselves in East Texas." He glanced up. "Fish was cheap eating if you could catch it yourself." "You have sisters? Where are they now?" Zara asked, genuinely curious. A shadow passed over his face. 2 married good men in Dallas, the youngest Annie. He paused, focusing intently on the cooking fish. "Lost her to tuberculosis in '69. She was just 17. I'm sorry, Zara said softly, understanding the particular ache of that kind of loss. Garrett nodded his acknowledgement. Your husband, he said after a moment. If you don't mind my asking, was it illness that took him? The directness of the question startled her, but somehow, sitting by this creek with this quiet man, Zara found she didn't mind. Stagecoach robbery. We were heading to Helena to start fresh. He'd been offered work as a carpenter. I'm sorry, Garrett echoed her words. Man should be able to travel safely with his wife. Should be, Zara agreed, staring into the flames. But this territory doesn't much care what should be, does it? Garrett handed her a plate with perfectly cooked trout. No, it doesn't. Makes the good things that do happen here all the more precious, I suppose. They ate in companionable silence as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the water. When they finished, Garrett packed up his fishing gear and doused the fire with creek water. Best be getting back before dark, he said, helping Zara onto Penny. Wolves get bold this time of year. Thank you for dinner, Mr. Galloway, she said, looking down at him from the saddle. It was nice. Garrett, he corrected gently. If we're sharing meals, might as well use my given name. Garrett, she repeated, testing the feel of it. Then I'm Zara, not Miss Fletcher. Zara, he said, and something about the way her name sounded in his deep voice made her heart skip. Ride safe, Zara. As they rode back toward town side by side, Zara realized with a start that this was the first time since Thomas's death that she'd spent hours without thinking about her loss. The guilt followed immediately. How could she forget, even momentarily? But as she glanced at Garrett's profile against the sunset, another feeling emerged alongside the guilt. Possibility. Over the next weeks, autumn deepened toward winter in Silver Gulch. Zara continued working at the saloon, but her days took on a new pattern. She rode Penny every morning, sometimes encountering Garrett on the trails, sometimes riding alongside him intentionally. Their conversations grew easier, revealing pieces of themselves in careful measures. She learned that he'd fought for the Confederacy, not out of conviction, but because that's what Texas boys did, and had spent years after the war haunted by what he'd seen. He'd been a lawman for a time, then a bounty hunter, until violence had taken too much from him. The livery business was his attempt at redemption, creating something rather than destroying. In turn, she told him about growing up in St. Louis, the daughter of a school teacher who'd instilled in her a love of books, about meeting Thomas at a church social, and his dreams of building beautiful homes in the West, about the quilt she'd wrapped him in before burial hand stitched by her mother, who died the previous winter. The only keepsake Zara had salvaged from the robbery was a small square of that fabric, which she kept in a locket around her neck. One evening in late October, a fierce storm descended on Silver Gulch. The saloon was nearly empty, most folks having headed home early to avoid the weather. As Zara wiped down tables, the door burst open to reveal Garrett, soaked through and urgent. Creek's flooding, he announced to the few patrons. Anyone with property near the water should check their livestock. Johnson's lost 3 sheep already. Men hurriedly downed their drinks and departed. Zara approached Garrett, concern evident on her face. The livery? She asked. Moved all the horses to higher ground, he assured her. But I'm worried about your place. That room above the general store is right in the flood path if the water keeps rising. As if confirming his fears, the town's bell began to ring the signal for emergency. Outside, people were shouting, moving belongings to upper floors. I need to get my things, Zara said, reaching for her coat. Garrett caught her arm. I'll come with you. They rushed through the driving rain to the general store. Already, water was seeping under the door. Inside, the shopkeeper was frantically moving merchandise to higher shelves. Get what you need quick, Zara, he called. Water's coming up fast. Zara hurried upstairs to her small room. She had little of value, some clothes, a few books, the photograph of Thomas she kept by her bed. But as she stuffed these into a bag, she heard a tremendous crack, followed by shouts from below. Garrett appeared in her doorway, breathless. Mill dam's broken. We need to go now. No sooner had he spoken than a surge of water hit the building, making it shudder. Through her window, Zara could see the main street transforming into a rushing river. There's no way out, she realized aloud. There is, Garrett countered, pointing to the sloped roof outside her window. We can make it to the church steeple. It's on higher ground. The journey across slippery rooftops and driving rain was terrifying. Garrett went first, testing each foothold, then reaching back to help Zara. When they finally reached the church, several other townspeople had already taken refuge inside. The storm raged through the night. Zara sat in a pew, wrapped in a blanket the preacher had provided, watching Garrett help organize the displaced townsfolk. He moved with quiet efficiency, reassuring children, distributing what supplies were available, never raising his voice, yet somehow commanding respect. Near dawn, when the rain finally subsided and most had fallen into exhausted sleep, he sat beside her, his own weariness evident in the slump of his broad shoulders. "You should rest," she told him softly. "I will." But he made no move to leave her side. After a moment, he said, "I was worried when I couldn't find you at first. Thought maybe—" He didn't finish, but Zara understood. In a world where loss came suddenly and without warning, each separation carried the seed of fear that it might be permanent. "I'm fine," she assured him, and impulsively placed her hand over his. Garrett looked down at their joined hands, then turned his palm upward to entwine their fingers. The simple gesture felt monumental, an acknowledgement of something growing between them that neither had yet named. "When I came to Silver Gulch," he said, his voice low to avoid waking others, "I thought I was done with caring about people. Figured it was safer that way." "And now?" Zara asked, barely breathing. His green eyes held hers. "Now, I'm not so sure that safety is worth the cost." Before she could respond, a commotion at the door interrupted them. The mayor had arrived with news the floodwaters were receding, but several buildings had been damaged or destroyed, including the general store where Zara had lived. "We'll need volunteers to help with rebuilding," the mayor announced, "and places for folks to stay until their homes are repaired." Garrett stood. "My place up on the hill is untouched. I've got room for several people." His eyes found Zara's, a question in them. She nodded slightly, understanding what he was offering, not just shelter, but a choice, a step towards something new. The following days were a blur of activity as Silver Gulch began to rebuild. Zara moved temporarily into Garrett's modest house on the outskirts of town. It was a simple structure, but solid, with 2 bedrooms and a stone fireplace that kept the autumn chill at bay. She took the spare room, while Garrett insisted on sleeping on a bedroll by the fire. "Spent most of my life under stars," he said when she protested. "A roof overhead is luxury enough." They fell into a comfortable routine. Garrett would rise before dawn to tend to the horses at the livery, while Zara prepared breakfast. In the evenings, after helping with town repairs and serving at the partially rebuilt saloon, she would return to find him reading by the fire, a habit that surprised and delighted her. "People assume because I work with horses that I'm uneducated," he explained when she commented on his well-worn copy of Thoreau. "Truth is, books kept me sane during the war. Man can escape almost anything in the right story." One evening in early November, as the first snowflakes began to fall outside the window, Zara was mending a tear in one of Garrett's shirts when he cleared his throat nervously. "The general store won't be habitable till spring," he said, setting aside his book, "and with winter coming on." "Are you asking me to leave?" Zara asked, her hands stilling on the fabric. "No," he said quickly. "The opposite, in fact. I'm saying you should stay, permanently." He stood, pacing before the fire. "I know it's not proper, and people might talk, but you could have the bedroom, and I'll still sleep out here, and—" "Garrett," Zara interrupted gently. "People already talk. Half the town thinks we're secretly married anyway." He stopped pacing, turning to face her with an expression of genuine surprise. "They do?" Zara couldn't help but laugh. For a former lawman, he could be remarkably unobservant about certain things. "The way you look at me isn't exactly subtle." A flush crept up his neck. "And how do I look at you?" Setting aside her sewing, Zara rose and approached him. "Like I'm something precious you never expected to find." She took a deep breath. "The same way I find myself looking at you when I think you won't notice." The confession hung between them, changing everything and nothing all at once. Garrett reached out slowly, giving her every chance to step away, and touched her cheek with a gentleness that made her heart ache. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," he admitted. "After Annie died, After the war took so many friends, I decided caring for people was a fool's game in a world this harsh. I felt the same after Thomas, Zara whispered, like loving someone was just setting yourself up for pain. And now? He echoed her question from the church. Zara placed her hand over his, holding it against her cheek. Now, I think perhaps the pain of loss is the price we pay for the joy of loving, and it's worth it. Garrett's eyes darkened. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he lowered his head and kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning, but when Zara responded, sliding her arms around his neck, the kiss deepened into something that spoke of long, suppressed need. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Garrett rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he murmured. "Not rushed, not because of circumstance." Zara understood what he wasn't saying, that despite their feelings, he respected her too much to take advantage of their living arrangement. It only made her love him more. "Then court me properly, Mr. Galloway," she said with a small smile. "Although I think we may be doing things a bit out of order." He laughed, the sound warming her more than the fire ever could. "I've never been one for convention anyway." As winter settled over Silver Gulch, Garrett courted Zara with a dedication that became the talk of the town. He brought her wildflower honey from a farmer outside town, knowing her fondness for sweet tea. He carved her a delicate wooden hairpin in the shape of a penny blossom, a nod to the mare that had first brought them together. When the saloon owner mentioned needing entertainment to draw customers during the cold months, Garrett surprised everyone by bringing in his fiddle, untouched for years, and playing haunting melodies that had miners and cowboys alike sitting in respectful silence. For Christmas, he gave her a leather-bound journal. "For writing your stories," he explained, "the ones you tell about St. Louis and your pa's teachings. They shouldn't be lost." Zara's gift to him was a hand-knitted scarf, made during the quiet evening hours by the fire. "So you'll stay warm on your dawn rides," she said, as he wrapped it around his neck, his eyes suspiciously bright. In January, as a blizzard howled outside, they sat before the fire, drinking coffee laced with whiskey. Garrett had been uncharacteristically quiet all evening, lost in thought. "Is everything all right?" Zara finally asked. "You seem troubled." He set down his cup, turning to face her fully. "I've been thinking about spring." "What about it?" "The general store will be finished by then. You'll be expected to move back." He took her hand. "Unless you had other plans." Zara's heart quickened. "What other plans might I have?" Garrett reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, a simple gold band with a tiny pearl set into it. "I was thinking you might consider becoming Mrs. Galloway." The proposal, for all that it had been building between them, still took Zara's breath away. She stared at the ring, memories of Thomas's proposal flashing through her mind so different. In a St. Louis park, with her family watching from a distance. Garrett must have misinterpreted her silence, for he started to withdraw his hand. "It's too soon. I understand if—" "No," Zara interrupted, catching his wrist. "It's not that. It's just—" She took a deep breath. "I love Thomas. Part of me always will." "I know," Garrett said simply. "I wouldn't want you to forget him. Our pasts make us who we are." His understanding broke something open in Zara's chest. She took the ring from his palm. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you, Garrett Galloway." His smile could have lit the darkest night as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "It was my grandmother's," he explained. "Only thing of value my father left us. My mother kept it safe all these years, told me to save it for when I found someone worth building a life with." "It's perfect," Zara said, admiring how the pearl caught the firelight. Then she frowned slightly. "But spring is still months away. That's a long engagement." Garrett's eyebrow rose. "Did you have something sooner in mind?" "Well," Zara said, feeling suddenly bold. "The preacher's wife told me he'll be passing through Copper Creek next week. It's only a half-day's ride." A slow grin spread across Garrett's face. "Eager to make an honest man of me, are you?" Zara leaned forward, pressing a kiss to his lips. "Perhaps I'm just eager to stop sleeping alone while you're out here by the fire." The naked want that flashed in his eyes made her shiver, but true to his word about doing things properly, Garrett merely returned her kiss before pulling back. "Next week it is, then." They were married in the Copper Creek Church on a crisp January morning, with only the preacher, his wife, and a couple of travelers as witnesses. Zara wore her best dress, a deep blue wool that complemented her auburn hair, and Garrett wore a new black coat over a freshly pressed shirt. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt, both of them speaking their vows in clear, unwavering voices. As they rode back toward Silver Gulch, snow began to fall, again gentle flakes that caught in Zara's hair like a veil. "Are you cold, Mrs. Galloway?" Garrett asked, the new name making Zara smile despite herself. "Not at all, Mr. Galloway," she replied, urging Penny closer to his stallion. "In fact, I'm quite looking forward to getting home." The meaning in her words was unmistakable. Garrett's eyes darkened as he reached across to take her hand. "Then perhaps we should ride a bit faster." Their arrival in town as a married couple caused the expected stir, though most expressed only happiness for them. By the time they reached their house, darkness had fallen and the snowfall had intensified. Inside, Garrett built up the fire while Zara removed her heavy cloak and boots. When she turned, he was watching her with an intensity that sent heat flooding through her body. "Second thoughts?" he asked softly. Zara shook her head, suddenly shy despite her earlier boldness. "No, it's been a while." He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "We have all night, all our lives in fact." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I want to know every part of you, Zara, but only what you want to give." Her nervousness melted under his gentle consideration. Rising onto her toes, she kissed him deeply, feeling his restraint give way as he pulled her against him. What followed was a discovery of each other's bodies, of unexpected laughter and intimate moments, of the profound connection that physical love could create between two souls already intertwined. In Garrett's arms, Zara found not the erasure of her past, but its integration into a new present, one where joy could coexist with memory. Later, as they lay tangled in sheets, Garrett's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Zara felt a contentment she had not believed possible again. "What are you thinking?" he murmured against her hair. "That life takes unexpected turns," she replied, tracing a finger along one of the scars on his chest. "A year ago, I couldn't imagine feeling happy again." His arms tightened around her. "And now?" Zara lifted her head to look at him, taking in the strong planes of his face softened by tenderness. "Now, I think happiness isn't something you find once and keep forever. It's something you have to choose, again and again, even knowing it might be taken away." Garrett's eyes grew serious. "I can't promise nothing will ever happen to either of us. This territory's still wild, life's uncertain. I don't need that promise," Zara assured him. "I just need to know that whatever time we have, we'll spend it fully alive, not half dead with fear of what might come." His kiss was answer enough. Spring arrived in Silver Gulch with a riot of wildflowers and renewed activity. The town had recovered from the flood's damage, and new buildings were going up alongside the repaired ones. The general store reopened, though Zara, now firmly established as Mrs. Galloway, had no need to return to her old room. Her life with Garrett settled into a rhythm that suited them both. She continued working at the saloon 3 days a week, more for the social connection than the money. The rest of her time was split between helping at the livery, tending their expanded garden, and beginning to write down the stories of her childhood, as Garrett had encouraged. Garrett's business thrived as spring roundups brought ranchers looking for fresh stock. He had developed a reputation for fair dealing and exceptional horsemanship that drew customers from as far as Bozeman. But those who knew him well noted a profound change. The guarded wariness that had marked him since arriving in Silver Gulch had given way to an easy confidence, a man at peace with his place in the world. In late April, as Zara was preparing supper, Garrett burst through the door with unusual excitement. "Pack a bag," he announced, grinning. "We're taking a trip." Zara looked up from the stew she was stirring. "A trip? Where to?" "Helena," he replied, pulling her into his arms. "Got a letter from a rancher there who wants to buy 6 horses. It's good business and—" he hesitated. "I thought maybe you'd want to finally see the place you were heading when Thomas died," Zara finished for him. There was sadness in the words, but not the devastating grief of before. "I think I'd like that, actually, to see what might have been and be grateful for what is. 2 days later, they set out with the horses, taking the same stagecoach route that had changed Zara's life so dramatically. As they approached the spot where the robbery had occurred, Zara grew quiet, her hand instinctively going to the locket containing the scrap of quilt. Garrett, sensing her tension, reached across to take her hand. "We can go around if you prefer." Zara squeezed his fingers. "No, I need to see it." They stopped beneath the cottonwood tree where Thomas lay buried. The crude wooden marker Zara had fashioned was weathered but still standing. She knelt beside it, brushing away dead leaves. "I brought him here because he loved trees," she explained as Garrett stood respectfully behind her. "He grew up in Chicago, said he never saw anything as beautiful as a cottonwood against a Montana sky." "He had good taste," Garrett said quietly, "in trees and in women." Zara smiled despite her tears. "He would have liked you, I think. He always said character mattered more than circumstances." She stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. From her pocket, she withdrew a small bundle wildflowers picked along their journey. These she laid upon the grave, a final farewell. "Ready?" Garrett asked gently. Zara nodded, taking his offered hand. "Ready?" Helena was larger and more established than Silver Gulch, with brick buildings and boardwalks lining the streets. After delivering the horses to the rancher, Garrett took Zara to dinner at a real restaurant, a luxury they rarely experienced. Over roast beef and apple pie, they talked about the future. "I've been thinking," Garrett said, watching Zara enjoy her dessert with evident pleasure. "The livery's doing well enough that we could expand, maybe build a proper house, something with more room." Zara set down her fork. "More room? Are you tired of having me underfoot all the time?" He laughed, reaching for her hand across the table. "Quite the opposite. I was thinking we might need more space if our family were to grow." The implication wasn't lost on Zara. They'd discussed children in abstract terms, but this was the first concrete suggestion of actively planning for them. "Are you saying you want to start a family?" she asked, her heart suddenly racing. Garrett's expression grew serious. "I lost my sister. You lost your husband. We both know there are no guarantees in this life." He rubbed his thumb across her knuckles. "But I find myself wanting to build something that might outlast us both. A family, a legacy of sorts." Zara thought of the children she and Thomas had planned to have, dreams suspended by his death. She thought of how she'd closed herself off from such hopes, believing they'd died with him, and she thought of Garrett, this good, steady man who had reawakened her capacity for joy. "Yes," she said simply. "I'd like that very much." Their return journey to Silver Gulch was filled with plans for the expanded livery, for the new house, for the future they would build together. They camped beneath the stars on the third night, and as Garrett played his fiddle by the campfire, Zara felt a completeness she had once thought forever beyond her reach. Summer passed in a haze of hard work and quiet contentment. By August, the new house was taking shape on their property, a sturdy 2-story structure with large windows to capture the mountain views. Garrett insisted on a proper kitchen for Zara and built bookshelves into the walls of what would be their sitting room. As autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds once more, marking a year since their lives had intersected, Zara confirmed what she'd suspected for weeks she was with child. When she told Garrett, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He lifted her off her feet in a jubilant embrace, then set her down so gently it was as if she might break. "I'll finish the nursery this week," he promised, his hand reverently touching her still flat stomach. "We have months yet," Zara laughed, but she was touched by his enthusiasm. Their first winter as expectant parents was both challenging and sweet. Garrett became ever more protective, insisting on handling chores Zara had always done. She tolerated his hovering with good humor, recognizing it as an expression of love rather than doubt in her capabilities. On a particularly cold December evening, as a blizzard raged outside their snug house, Zara sat by the fire, knitting a small blanket. Garrett had gone to check on the horses in the barn, ensuring they were comfortable despite the storm. When he didn't return after an hour, Zara began to worry. Just as she was considering bundling up to look for him, the door opened, bringing with it a gust of snow and a half-frozen Garrett. His face was pale, his lips tinged with blue. "The barn roof was collapsing under the snow," he explained through chattering teeth. Had to get the horses out and into the storage shed. Zara rushed to help him remove his ice-encrusted coat and boots. "You're freezing! Get by the fire immediately." She built up the flames while Garrett sank into his favorite chair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Zara brought him hot coffee laced with whiskey, which he accepted gratefully. "You shouldn't have stayed out so long," she scolded gently, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. "Couldn't leave them," he mumbled, his eyes already drooping from the combination of warmth, alcohol, and fatigue. "They depend on me." Zara watched as he fought to stay awake, recognizing the futility of the battle. Within minutes, his head had lolled back, his breathing deep and even. Rather than wake him to move to their bed, she let him sleep where he sat, the fire's glow highlighting the silver just beginning to thread through his dark hair. She stood watching him for a long moment. This man who had rebuilt her world. Then, moved by a sudden impulse, she went to the chest where she kept her few treasures from her life before Silver Gulch. From it, she withdrew a folded quilt, the twin to the one in which she'd buried Thomas. Saved because she couldn't bear to use the one that reminded her so painfully of her mother. The quilt was simple but beautiful, pieced from scraps of meaningful fabrics, a square from her childhood dress, another from her father's Sunday shirt, dozens of memories stitched together with her mother's patient hands. Zara had kept it wrapped away, too painful to use but too precious to discard. Now she shook it open, inhaling the faint scent of lavender that still clung to its folds. Carefully she draped it over Garrett's sleeping form, tucking it around his shoulders. As she did, she felt not the sharp pain of remembrance, but a gentle melancholy, sweet in its way, the acknowledgement that past and present could coexist, that loving again didn't diminish what came before. Garrett stirred slightly, murmuring in his sleep, then settled deeper into the chair's embrace. Zara bent to press a kiss to his forehead, before adding another log to the fire. Outside, the blizzard continued its assault, but within these walls, within the life they'd built together, all was well. As she prepared for bed, Zara paused in the doorway of what would soon be the nursery. Moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating the half-finished crib Garrett had been crafting. She placed a hand on her growing belly, feeling the flutter of movement within. "You'll know both stories, little one," she whispered, "of the father who never got to meet you, and the father who will love you as his own, of the grandmother who stitched love into fabric, and the grandfather who carved it into wood. You will be the bridge between what was and what is our future, born from all that came before." Spring arrived early that year, bringing with it the birth of their daughter, whom they named Elizabeth Annie Galloway. Elizabeth for Zara's mother, Annie for Garrett's sister. She had her father's green eyes and her mother's auburn hair, and from her very first cry, she held them both in thrall. The livery continued to prosper, expanding to include a small breeding operation, specializing in quarter horses. Zara, when Elizabeth was old enough, began teaching reading to the town's children 3 afternoons a week, fulfilling her mother's legacy in her own way. And every winter, when the nights grew long and cold, when Garrett would sometimes fall asleep in his chair by the fire after a day's hard work, Zara would cover him with her mother's quilt. It was no longer a relic of loss, but a symbol of continuity, the tangible thread connecting all the loves of her life. Years passed as they do, bringing changes both expected and surprising. 2 more children joined their family twin boys, Thomas and James. As rambunctious as their sister was thoughtful, Silver Gulch grew into a proper town, with a school where Zara eventually taught full-time. Garrett's reputation as a horseman spread throughout the territory, bringing customers from as far as Wyoming and the Dakotas. On their 10th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their home watching their children play in the yard, Garrett took Zara's hand. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if that flood hadn't washed you out of your room above the store?" Zara smiled, the lines around her eyes crinkling with the memories of a decade's laughter. "I think we would have found our way to each other somehow. Some things are just meant to be, even in a world where so much happens by chance." Garrett nodded, his gaze moving to Elizabeth, teaching her brothers how to make daisy chains. "I used to think the best a man could hope for was to die quickly when his time came. Now I know better." He squeezed her hand. "The best a person can hope for is to love deeply, build something worthwhile, and leave the world a little better than they found it." And have you found that hope? Zara asked softly. Garrett turned to her, the same tenderness in his eyes that had been there when he'd first proposed. I've found that and more, Mrs. Galloway. I've found a life worth every scar it took to get here. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in the same crimson hues that had backlit their first meeting, Zara rested her head on her husband's shoulder. The quilt lay folded inside, ready for the cooler evening ahead. A testament to loss transformed into legacy. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but woven into the fabric of a life rebuilt, one stitch at a time, with patience and courage and love.